Welcome to the Morning Coffee with Alan podcast, the less is more approach to personal development. Hello, and welcome to the Morning Coffee with Alan podcast, the podcast where I really try to share a less is more approach to personal development. And in this episode, I'm going to be really kind of laying the foundations for what to expect on this podcast. Now, I should say this is a work in progress, and I'm completely open to this podcast, sort of growing and blossoming and just taking form as I go. But I'm going to share with you some things that right now look like where I want to take this and what you can expect, at least in the near future. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing a Morning Coffee with Alan podcast? And well, the first reason is because I really want to begin to document my journey. You know, as I record this, it's this crazy year of 2020, and I really feel like the last, 3 or 4 years have really sort of prepared me for this crazy time that we're experiencing right now in the world. And I know that a lot of people are suffering. I know a lot of people are going through difficult circumstances, to say the least. And I feel fortunate to have an understanding to fall back on that has really, really served me. Now, one of the things that I want to say right off the bat is, most of you, if you're listening to this podcast, you might really know me as a fast EFT practitioner. Over the last couple of years, I haven't really been too involved with that modality, and so I'm going to kind of share with you my thoughts on that, and explain to you why I haven't been as active in that community, and also what direction I'm heading, and why I think it's important, and why it's really helped me, and the experience I've had working with clients over the last few years. And hopefully you'll get something out of it, I want to go on a journey with you. I want us to kind of go on this journey together. And so this might not be for everybody. This is going to be sometimes I might make a lot of sense, and sometimes I might not, and that's going to be kind of the nature of these talks, because this understanding that I've sort of been able to fall back on, and that's really helped me so tremendously over the last few years. It's not a technique. It's not a modality. It really is more of a way to see your life, to see life in general, to see your experience of life in a way that can really do something for you. And just to back up a little bit, it's, what are we all looking for? I think that whether we're chasing our goals, and we have big audacious goals or dreams that we want to accomplish, or we want to, whatever it is we want to do, I think that most of us are looking to have those things, whether it's an experience, a trip, a place to go, amount of money in the bank, or a title, or a job, or a relationship, or any of these things. What most of us are looking for is what we think those things are going to make us feel. right? We're looking for feelings. And the amazing thing about that is that feelings don't come from anything outside of us. Like, feelings are an internal production. Now, it's not to say that we shouldn't go looking or, go creating experiences and going on trips and planning vacations and, just looking to have an overall more pleasant experience of life. I think that there's nothing wrong with doing things. I think that if we do it from a place of more clarity and uh, and just more, if we have less writing on it, if that makes sense. If we have less writing on it, then we're free to just kind of enjoy the whole process. Like, what's the point of buying that new home, let's say, as an example, if the journey to get there is so stressful and so just, driving you crazy, and there's so much drama and all of that? What's the point? Why not enjoy that process? Why not understand that life rarely goes the way we think it's going to go? And the more we can sort of bob and weave with life as it occurs, as it happens to us, I think the overall more pleasant experience we're going to have. So I don't know if that makes sense, but this is kind of the journey that I've been on, and that I want to share with you. Again, I really believe that that there is a less is more approach to personal development. And when I say personal development, I'm really talking about, sort of changing your relationship with yourself. And, I'll probably share my story on a different episode, but, one of the reasons that I began to gravitate further and further away from faster EFT. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. One of the reasons I've started, promoting faster EFT. Let's say, is because of a curious phenomenon. So I'll share a little story with you. Something that occurred to me a while back, and so, I've been on this journey for a long time, and one of the reasons I gravitated towards a lot of these different modalities was because I had a lot of anxiety, I had a lot of angst, I had a lot of, self-doubt and low self-esteem. Not always, but enough of the time where it often was debilitating, And I would have really good highs and then find myself the next moment in deep lows, and it was a pain in the ass, right? And so when I found certain modalities, starting with neurolinguistic programming, and then moving into hypnosis and EFT, emotional freedom technique, and then faster EFT, and on and on and on, what would happen is I would have a particular challenge, and I would quote unquote work on it, right, with these modalities, and it would seem like, oh wow, I feel a lot better now. That doesn't bother me anymore. And so I would kind of be on this high and think, man, I've made it. This is awesome. I love this stuff. And I'd sort of ride that high out for a while, and then one day I would notice that I was repeating the same patterns of behavior, or I would have a repeat of the very thing that I was trying to change or overcome. In other words, life would just happen, right? And what began to happen was I would get really down on myself for repeating different habits of behavior or thoughts, thinking that I had overcome them. And what began to happen was I began to add layers of thinking on top of, layers of self-talk, layers of self-doubt, layers of, insecurity. So it just became this heavy weight that I would carry around on myself. And it made the lows much more lower than they needed to be, if that makes sense. And I see this in a lot of different modalities. I see this with a lot of clients that I work with that are coming from different modalities. I've seen people in the law of attraction, arena, who may have felt like they, have had it worked for them at one point, and then in this other area in their life, they tried to do the law of attraction, whatever that means, and it didn't work, and they got so down on themselves because they in their minds they weren't doing it right, and so they got really, really down and depressed, not recognizing that was their dominant thought. They were just getting down on themselves. So no matter how many affirmations they read, no matter how many smiles they put on their face, underneath it, they were cultivating that self-doubt and worry and anxiety and everything else. And this is so common. I know it was for me. And so deep down inside, I really kind of knew there was something else going on. And back in 2009, I think it was, I was introduced to the work of Sydney Banks. And it had a bit of an effect on me. And so I'll be talking a lot about, I don't know if I'll be talking a lot about Sydney Banks, but Sydney Banks, his work and his area of teachings that became to be known as the three principles, and many of the people that worked with him, I ended up studying with them and getting a lot of support from them, particularly a coach of mine who never actually worked with Sydney, but ended up working with a lot of people who studied under Sydney, and his name is Jamie Smart. And Jamie was actually one of my NLP sort of guys that I would go to. I found him on YouTube years and years and years ago, and over 10 years ago, and I noticed that he had some courses. He had a company built around NLP, and so I was looking to model the masters. I was looking to look at people who really had their shit together, and he looked like he had it together. What I eventually found out, and he's told this story before, what I eventually found out is that even though he had this one of the best NLP businesses, online businesses, in the world at the time, with products and seminars and everything else, turns out he was miserable. Like he was doing all the things he thought he was supposed to be doing, but on the inside he wasn't feeling fulfilled. And he ended up getting some coaching and got introduced to this understanding, and he had an insight, and his insight inspired him, I should say, to change course in his business, like to drop the NLP business and totally move in a different direction. Now, for me, it did not happen quite so abruptly. This was back in 2010, I think it is, when Jamie announced to his email list that he was going to be changing directions. And that made me take notice. Like, I sort of went, okay, wait a minute. What in the world would have him totally drop everything and switch gears? And so I took notice, and that's when I did my own research and I started looking into the field of what has become known as the three principles. And I saw something. I spoke to some people. I read the books. I listened to the tapes, and I was touched. I was affected in a way. There was something there. But I remember telling my girlfriend about it at the time, and I said, there's something here. There's something I think I might need to pursue this. And in my effort to explain what I saw, of course, it sounded very, airy-fairy and kind of flighty and everything else. And so, rightfully so, she kind of looked at me like, that sounds okay, but what about your tapping business? Because I had already established myself as a practitioner of this tapping, and I had helped a lot of people already at that point. And when she said that, I immediately got insecure, and I thought, oh, you're right. Like, no, I can't. I'm on this journey. Like, I got to stick to this journey. Now, it should be said that I still think that if you are using, I'll say this, if you're using a modality like tapping or anything else, and you really feel like you're getting value from it, keep doing it. Keep using what works for you, because what you'll find that I end up saying a lot is, it's not the modality that's doing the heavy lifting. It's the insight and realization that reminds you about the modality, that it's that space, like for something like neurolinguistic programming, you have to remember to use it. Same goes with tapping, same goes with anything, right? Any modality. You have to have an awareness to apply it, right? With Faster EFT, I think one of the reasons I loved it so much was because it made sense to me. It made sense that, tapping was a way to sort of change course. It was a way to sort of interrupt my habitual thought patterns and, sort of pivot in a new direction. But you still have to remember when to use it. And so what I've become really interested in is what has you remember to use it? And if we take a step back further, what else can occur to you in those moments? Like, what if there was one answer to all of your problems, all of your pains, all of your issues, your symptoms? What if there was one answer and it was the same every single time? Well, that's what I'm proposing here, is that seeing the simplicity of life, seeing the true nature of how your experience is being created from moment to moment, seeing that you are so much more than your problems or your circumstances or your ideas about who you are or your name or your job or your body or any of that. You're so much more. And so what I've found is that if we begin to wake up, if we begin to look in that direction more and more, if we look in the direction of really it's a spiritual aspect, right? It's like you can't hold this in your hand, right? But if you're open to the possibility that there may be more to see in regards to your current situation, if you're open to the possibility that there may be more beyond the way the world looks to you already, One of the most simplistic ways to look at this is the fact that typically the more we have on our mind, the more cluttered our mind is. Generally, the more uptight we're going to be, like the more uncomfortable our experience is going to be, right? So that's kind of like, just stepping back a little bit, that's kind of like a really good rule of thumb, right? If I'm having an uneasy experience, right, whether it's frustration, anxiety, anger, anything, right? If it's uncomfortable, well, that just means that I've got a lot on my mind. That means you have a lot on your mind, right? And, if you're like me, I had this experience just on the way over here today, and I got caught in thought. And the thought was something to the effect of, oh, it's too bad you just haven't had a lot of education. You're kind of lazy, and you're not quite as smart as other people. There's other people out there that are way smarter than you. They just know more. They have more motivation. They have more this and that, whatever it was. And for a while, that as I was driving, I was in that thought. I was caught up in that thought, and man, it looked very real to me. It looked like, yep, I was sitting there going, yeah, boy, you voice, whoever you are, right? You're right. Yeah, I'm really, boy, I suck. And I was in that experience and it didn't feel very good. And then all of a sudden I dropped out of it, and it was a realization, it was an insight. It was an insight into how my experience of life was being created in that moment. Well, it was being created by me sort of shining my conscious awareness onto that particular thought and feeding it. I was just sort of feeding it, and as I fed it, it grew fatter and fatter until I woke up. And when I woke up, I started laughing out loud because I saw that feeling, that thought did not mean anything. The only meaning it had was what I was agreeing to in that moment, right? So I was giving it meaning, I was accepting it as truth, but the reality is it was nothing but a thought going through my awareness, and as I saw that, I was free. And I saw it so clearly that I laughed out loud. And there's just nothing more freeing than that, than seeing beyond, these old habitual thought patterns, right? So here's what I know. There's always more to see. There is always more to see in life. And you and I are on the same journey. We are, our experience is created through the same mechanism, if you will. Like, we are consciousness experiencing life through these bodies, and everything that we experience is thought generated. And even though our experience may be separate, and that is, how you see the world is different from me, your experiences are different, how our experiences are created is happening the same way. And so that means we have that in common, my friend. And that's what this podcast is really all about. It's about going on that journey together and exploring together, right? So there's always more to see. Like I said, modalities are wonderful. I think that they're stepping stones, and if you are willing to take the next step and to see something with a little more deeply, I'm holding my hand out there for you. And And to be clear, I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I get caught up in bullshit all the time, right? All the time. But I find myself snapping out of it more and more and more, and uh, more readily. Like, I don't hang around and muck around in the bullshit as long, quite as long as I used to. And that's nice. It really is nice. Um, I mentioned the different layers of thinking, just to be aware of that. I think that to be aware that, for me, one of the toughest things to pull myself out of was this sneaky way that thought can sort of come in layers, and you may see the illusion of thought in one area of your life, but in another area of your life, it's too habitual. It's too, you've just accepted it for too long, and it's really sticky. So I gotta tell you that continuing to look in this direction is the most liberating thing. And you may not see it overnight. You may have an epiphany, and that trickles out into all these different areas of your life. For me, because I was so wrapped up into this idea of personal development and self-improvement and yada yada yada, I would have big highs and big lows, as I mentioned before. And so what I'm really looking at now is how to have a more flow state of life, and this to me is what a flourishing life is. A flourishing life is being able to, navigate the ups and downs of our experience with more grace, And so all that I ask, if you're willing to go on this journey with me, is that you're open to seeing more, and probably the most important thing is, don't take what I say as gospel. Really reflect and, reflect on your own experience, right? Get reflective on your own experience. And try this out. So I hope this wasn't too rambly. Probably was. But I'll say that probably some of these podcasts are going to be a little more succinct, and others are going to be me kind of rambling. And then some of them are going to be conversations with my friends and colleagues, and those are some that I'm really looking forward to. Rather than being interview format, I'm really looking forward to just having conversations and having deep conversations. And I might have some clients on here as well and share some coaching conversations with you. So that's it for this one, I think. And I just want to say, if you would like more information on how to work with me, I'm currently open to working with a small group of people. You can go to alancombis.com, and the first step is really just to have a 30-minute conversation with me, and that is really an introductory call, so you and I can just have a quick chat, and I can get to know a little bit about how the world looks to you, and I'm willing to answer any questions, of course, that you might have. And then from there, we would take a look at what's the next step, and we'd probably, if it made sense to work together, we'd book another call and dive a little deeper and come up with a game plan of working together. So you can go to alancombis.com to check that out. And I want to thank you for listening. I'm really curious myself to see where all of this goes. And I'm really honored to have you with me along on this journey. All right. This is Alan Combis wishing you peace, love, and clarity. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.